Welcome to Teams Transformed, the podcast for people who want to see real team transformation.
For courageous coaches, curious leaders, and anyone passionate about unlocking the true power of teams.
We're your hosts, Georgina
and Allard.
Here to journey with you through transformational insights on how to coach teams with presence, depth, and emergence.
Let's explore not just the tools, but the art of transforming teams.
Welcome back to Teams Transformed. In this episode, we're going to be talking about moments of emergence, when something shifted, something significant happened, and how that was generated. And we'll be talking about tumbleweed moments.
We're here today with Emily Jones and Sebastian Fox. Now, Emily has been working with senior teams for over a decade and loves the discomfort and messiness and unpredictability that comes from working emergently. She's trained with the Team Coaching Studio and works with teams from a number of sectors. One of her core beliefs is that work should be fulfilling and that she's on a mission to support leaders to find joy in their work.
And alongside Emily, we're joined by Dr. Sebastian Fox. Seb also trained with the Team Coaching Studio. He's a team coach and published researcher who works with leadership teams to help them become more effective. His work on working emergently has shown how this approach generates the greatest impact for teams. How exciting. We're here today talking with Sebastian Fox and Emily Jones, two extraordinary team coaches, about moments of emergence.
Yeah, it's wonderful to see you. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation, Seb and Emily. We've known each other for a long time. We've worked side by side on different projects, and this is the first time that you're in the podcast seat. How does it feel?
Slightly unnerving, actually. Probably more nervous than standing in front of a team for the first time.
That's saying a lot.
Yes.
Yeah, lovely. It's so good to see you. And Seb, how are you today?
Yeah, no, great to be here, and thank you for inviting us on to the podcast. No, I'm looking forward to this. I think it's such an interesting subject to talk about. I'm sure we'll have loads of things to discuss between us all. So yeah, really looking forward to it.
You know, what I'm curious about, I really want to get into stories in this series and start to make it real and bring moments of emergence to life. And that's why we wanted to record this series, and recognizing that every team coach and every team coaching pair is different. And what we mean by emergence and how that happens and how we hold the space is different. So it's to honour that and get more voices out there about that. So speak freely about your experiences today. And I wonder whether you can recall a time when something unexpected happened, something happened with a team you're working with that generated a shift, something that you might call a moment of emergence. And love to hear a bit about that.
Plenty of examples, which very happy to share ones that might resonate with people. But Emily, do you want to go off first?
Absolutely, I can. And the one that absolutely comes to mind is probably the first time that I felt a bit rabbit in headlights, and what do I do with this, because this is unexpected. And actually it shouldn't have been unexpected, because I knew the team. And I'd worked with them for a while. And what I'd done had been fairly facilitative up until that point. And I was coaching them one-to-one as well. And we were doing a series of one-to-ones, and then we were getting the team together and having a couple of hours around, learnings and what that meant as far as team. And it got to a point where the team spoke a few truths from their point of view, I started off feeling very comfortable, very safe, thinking this needs to come out. They've told me this. They're now feeling safe enough to tell each other. Fabulous. And it pretty quickly escalated into something that felt a little bit edgy, actually, and a little bit out of control is not the right word, but yeah, edgy is probably the right word. And I sat watching it thinking, is this my edginess or is this their edginess? How much of this is me and my aversion to conflict? And how much of this is is stuff that's really important. And I kind of let it go a bit, possibly a bit too long. And I had an experience where pretty much the whole team were looking at me as if to say, fix this. This is not okay, you know. And I was being pulled into saying something, intervening, fixing, sorting, placating, actually, because I know what I'm like with conflict. Or I know, let me say, I know what I was like with conflict.
Yeah.
Actually, this was a really, really good learning experience for me. And what I did is I called it out and I said, look, I'm being pulled into, I can feel myself wanting to fix this, wanting to make this okay. I don't know what's going on for you. Can I suggest a 5-minute timeout? Because this feels like an important conversation to have, and one that we haven't had in this room before. Can I suggest 5 minutes? I'm going to walk around the block. I'm going to get some fresh air and suggest you guys take some time out to however you want to do it. And then we came back into the room and we contracted about what was important about that conversation and did they want to have that conversation. So I kind of brought more structure into it at that point to kind of try and create a bit of boundaries to be able to have that conversation in a really positive way. And, you know, the team were brilliant. The team were absolutely brilliant. And I knew from conversations one-to-one that this was a conversation that was going to unlock something or could potentially unlock something. Yeah, so the fact that they kind of wandered into it and then were willing to continue having it in a different way was fabulous. And actually, we came back in the room and I stepped out. I said, this is your conversation. After doing a bit of contracting around how you want to have this conversation, this is your conversation. I'm going to take myself to the back of the room and I'm going to let you have this. And when you're ready, if you want me to come back in, then call me back in. And I think the impact on the team was that they, the way they were talking to each other changed. They realised how they had responded, and it was response from frustration and not feeling heard and not being able to kind of get their voices across. And I continued working with that team for a while longer. In fact, still in contact with a couple of them now and do occasional one-to-one sessions with the leaders. And the team itself isn't the same now. People have changed. This was a few years ago. But I think the lessons from that have gone through into people's leadership. You know, they were, I think they learned a lot. I learned an awful lot. And interestingly, it really made me unafraid of conflict in the moment and in Emergence. It really made me feel much more prepared, actually, and comfortable with holding that space. So, yeah, probably when you know, you kind of said, think about it, that was a big moment for me and my practice. And it worked out okay. Thank goodness.
Yeah, it worked out okay. Love that. No, I'm taking some. I'm talking out loud as I'm writing down a couple of things you're saying, Emily, which I'd love to come back to in a little while. But Seb, you can say something.
Well, in fact, I wasn't going to talk about this example at all, but I think picking up on what you've just said, Emily, I'd like to share an example that actually didn't end up well for me or the team, where it was very, very early on in my team coaching experience. I think virtually the first team I had worked with a co-coach, and it was obvious from the work that he'd done with them beforehand in discovery phase that, you know, there was some quite difficult team dynamics that they were naming privately to us, but subsequently would absolutely not talk about in the team. Question about, you know, did they feel safe enough? And we constantly tried to get them to voice some of these truths, as you said, and they just would not. They really didn't feel ready or able to do so in that environment. And try as we might, they started getting more and more frustrated. And in the end, we didn't, I mean, we obviously recognized they were getting frustrated, but we were still trying to come back to what we knew needed to be surfaced if the team wanted to move on. And in the end, what happened was that they turned their frustration on us as the coaches, or projected their frustration, more perhaps better way of putting it. And basically said they weren't prepared to work with us because they weren't getting out of the coaching, and it was just causing ructions in the team, and it was just making them frustrated. And again, as you were saying, Emily, that taught me a huge amount about what's the minimum viable structure that the team needs, meeting them where they're at, and recognizing that sometimes jumping in with an approach that invites emergence isn't the best approach for every team in every situation. They may need much more of a firm and guiding hand when you're starting off with them to build up confidence in themselves and confidence in you as the coaches. So I've learned that lesson, learned it the hard way, but that's really stuck with me, and that was 7 or 8 years ago. So yeah, it can sometimes work out well, but other times not so.
Fantastic
I think
example. Thanks, Seb. And I think oftentimes when people are learning about emergence, I've seen before, they get so excited about emergence, they forget all that we talk about and all that we teach about structure. And, as I talked about in my book and in our courses, when we talk about the team coaching journey, it always starts with a stronger stance, a more facilitative stance at the beginning to create a container. And how we create those containers, the safe enough space to hold the work is so significant. And Emily, you did that in your story by contracting with them and making a clear contract. Am I in? Am I out? Take a time out. All to try and build that container of safety. And Seb, in your example, which thank you for sharing, I think it takes immense courage to share moments that didn't go well. In that example, I've worked with some teams where it can take months to build a container to get into working emergently. I'm not saying that team would have needed months, but sometimes
they would.
Fear and resistance, sharing what's there for them.
Yeah.
Powerful stories.
Yeah. Can I just come back to something actually, which really, I see subsequently, I mean, yes, that was some painful learning, but I think, one of the other things that really taught me was about holding the not holding the discomfort, being aware of the discomfort, and being aware of whose discomfort that is, because I think the team can feel hugely uncomfortable, and that inevitably impacts us as coaches. But I think learning to live with that for me is such an important part of working emergently. I was working with the team. This was during COVID, and we were working online with them, and again, there were some pretty stark team dynamics and some issues between the team leader and the rest of the team, which were quite obvious looking at the team from the outside. The team knew about them, but weren't ready at first to name what was going on for them. And having learned from previous example, we were quite facilitative at first, and actually had been working for them for a number of months before. There was one session I remember very well that something happened, and it led to a massive drop in energy in what was going on there. And honestly, literally, if I'd had an emoji at the time for tumbleweed, that would have been the moment to set it going, watch it rolling across the screen. And even on over Zoom, you could feel the discomfort that was being manifested in the team, and by this drop in energy and what had just happened, and what had crystallized this in the moment, what had led to the sensation in emergence terms was a fairly innocuous question around something that just happened in the previous conversation. I mean, it was not a big intervention in the sense that we suddenly thought it was going to have a massive difference. It was a simple question, and the team sort of, I mean, metaphorically, since they're all in different rooms, sat looking at each other across the screen, and this, nobody said anything. I mean, it felt like minutes. It probably wasn't that long, and just recognizing what was happening was really important, but for me and my co-coach, because we let them sit with it. And we let them sit with it for as long as they needed in order for them to tentatively suggest for themselves what it was they thought was going on. And that actually was the moment that they recognized that, they needed to be able to be honest with each other if they wanted to move on. And that was a very powerful moment for them.
And Seb, if I can just kind of say, that's a massive learning curve, isn't it, for us as team coaches, is how long do you leave it? The team are there and they're feeling uncomfort and they're sitting there and we suspect something is going to emerge from this, something is going to shift. It's a change point potentially. It's that gut feel of, do I step in and ask a question? Do I step in and name what I'm feeling or what I'm seeing, or do I let the team do the work? And how long do I let the team do the work? And I don't get it right every time by any means, but there's always that wrangle about, if I intervene now, am I going to lead it somewhere that's not where the most useful point for the team? So I think a really interesting example, and one way I think we just get really used to holding silences, don't we, and kind of being still and trying not to create any ripples and let the team do what it needs to do. That's been something that's probably still work in progress, actually, from my point of view. But getting better, but it has to be a felt thing.
It has to be a felt thing. Something like what came to me was a metaphor, like a balloon that's full of tension and feels like it's going to pop, and do we deflate it? Do we reduce the tension, or do we stay with it and hold the space where the team can then readjust and rebalance? And in my experience, a team that where you've done some good enough container building, someone in the team will take a risk and step into that space when we hold it. When we haven't done enough container building, then it's quite natural that the team, in that frustration, will deflect it onto us or someone else. And the energy kind of dissipates from it, but doesn't move in a productive way, in a learning way. So it's a great example.
But just going on from that, Georgina, I had myself and a co-coach actually only a few months ago had a very similar kind of thing where a member of the team was brave enough to actually say, I don't feel psychologically safe in this team. We'd had a fabulous morning in an off-site, this team member kind of just really, really courageous, actually. And actually the rest of the team thanked them for voicing something. And that wouldn't have happened if we hadn't been quite structured in the morning and created something where that person felt okay and felt that actually we, as the team and us, were holding the space well enough for them to be able to voice what they were saying. And it shifted the whole afternoon. Plans went out the window. We set up a dialogue, and members were able to voice what they were truly feeling rather than what they said they ought to voice. Really, really powerful afternoon. It took a lot of bravery from one person to make that shift.
I think it's such an important point, because one of the things that I've learned through my research is that the construct of psychological safety, it's easy to assume that at certain points it's a team-wide construct, and there's a bit of us as coaches taking a risk, because you can never be sure. But generally, we sense if we feel the team is safe enough to do the work that's necessary. But I think what that risks is us forgetting that, safety, as you just demonstrated, Emily, is an individual construct. Just because the team might feel safe to us doesn't mean to say in the moment someone might not actually feel safe enough to do the work. And I think unless we remember that, it's easy to, what happens is, as you demonstrated, one of the team members actually, paradoxically, I think, felt safe enough to name the fact they weren't safe enough. But quite often that doesn't happen. They'll disengage, they'll disrupt, they won't do the work, all sorts of things that I'm sure we've all seen.
It's interesting because when you're saying, psychological safety is an individual construct, absolutely. I think I completely agree. You can have most team members feeling safe and comfortable enough, and then a couple who don't, or one or two. And it makes me think, actually, as coaches, how do we prepare ourselves to be psychologically safe enough to do the work, actually? Because, we talk about teams and team members being safe enough to be courageous in the room. I haven't thought about where I'm going with that. I mean, I know as team coaches, we do an awful lot of critical reflexivity. We do a lot of reflection. We do a lot of CPD. We're members of fantastic communities, all that kind of thing. And how important is that? And in my view, it's really important to be able to feel safe enough and brave enough, actually, to work emergently, because it's emergent, isn't it? You never know what's going to happen. And you have to
and you've both spoken quite a bit about the discomfort, right, that comes with working emergently, and it's a messy business. And I remember an article by Declan Woods, Georgina, a few years ago that already spoke to this. I mean, he was way ahead of his time, I guess, in writing that. But so a lot of discomfort, and I think we all find our ways, Emily, as you're describing, of being with that discomfort, right, and creating a sense of safety, so to speak, or comfort for ourselves. And one of the ways that's sometimes talked about is in terms of, you've heard us use the word mantras, right? Little mantras, little things that we can repeat to ourselves. As in order to help us navigate the uncertainty. And so when you were talking earlier, Emily, and describing the example that you described, there was that sentence that stood out for me where you held on to this belief that it will unlock something, that you stayed with that conviction that this will unlock something. And then, of course, went for a walk around the block and all that. But I think that's a great mantra. Just, stay with it, it. This belief that it will unlock something. And another thing that you said was at the end, it said it worked out okay. It worked out okay. And that's another, I think, great mantra. This will work out okay. And what I mean by that is that, we're not all going to be jumping over each other in joy, maybe, but something will be learned if we help the team make collective meaning of the discomfort that happens. Something will be learned. And Seb, this speaks so much to the research that you just mentioned. I know the research in question is the PhD research, right, that you did. And congratulations, because I heard that this is going to be turned into a book real soon, at which time we're going to have you back on this program.
Well, don't hold your breath on that, Al. It might be a while before it's published, but be delighted.
We'll still remember you when the time comes. But this is one of the main things that your research points to, that it's in these moments of emergence, teams tell you that the real value of team coaching is to be found.
No, and that's absolutely right, and I think for me, that forgive the pun, but for me that's what really emerged from the research, because I wasn't researching emergence, but that's what came out, that teams themselves find it more helpful when they go through the processes of emergence, and something unexpected or something about which they're unaware surfaces, and they can make meaning of that and decide what they want to do with it. That's more helpful to them than predetermined goals or high performance or sort out dysfunctions or whatever. I mean, those may well have a place to be clear, but their outcomes, to my mind, there's something that will happen as a result of the work doing the team with the coach. So I think, there's a really important distinction, and that perhaps is not necessarily thought about so much. And I think, the importance of the processes as well, I think can't be understated. And I think just picking up on what we've been talking about, one of the things I noticed quite recently is that emergence might not actually be a sudden event that you notice in a session. It might take the time for something to emerge. And, a recent example of this, working with a team that, very, very time poor. And, I think initially there was a bit of resentment that the team leader said they should have, team coaching would help. So for the first 3 or 4 sessions, every time we were working with them, they defaulted back to talk about the task. This is, that was what was on their desk at that moment, or it just happened. And, we kept on drawing this to attention without offering them any judgment or suggesting they do something about it, but simply to say to them, this is what we're noticing. And for the first few sessions, they sort of looked at each other, then carried on with the conversation. And then, after 4 or 5 sessions, I was sensing quite a lot of frustration in myself at this point. And I said something along the lines of, I'm noticing I'm feeling quite frustrated. I'm just wondering whether anybody else is sensing that. And again, the tumbleweed moment when they looked around the table at each other. But, sort of after a while, someone else said, yes, I am. And sort of that led to a conversation around who was feeling frustrated. And but unfortunately the session had to end. We couldn't pick it up. But then the next session, when they started defaulting to task and we reflected it back to them, that's when they recalled the moment in the previous session and were able to start thinking about actually what was behind that frustration. And, then one of them said, well, why can't we use this time to talk about a task? I said, you're absolutely welcome to. It's not, it's for you to decide. I'm not going to tell you, but if you want to talk about your tasks, you don't need your coaches here. You can have that conversation wherever and whenever you like. And that then got them thinking again. And anyway, the short of it is that once they had made meaning around that and what they as a team realized what they needed in order to move forward, when this next session, which happened a couple of weeks ago, turned up, they were prepared to talk about something about themselves as a team. Yeah. They had real dialogue with themselves, between each other rather, about what it was that would make a difference for them as a team. And there was a huge difference in the way they were working together. Didn't talk about the task once, in terms of the day-to-day task, and it made a huge difference. Afterwards, my co-coach and I turned around, looked at each other, and said, what a difference! What a difference! But that had taken effectively 3 sessions to happen.
Mm-hmm. And I love what you did there, Seb, in the fact that you role modelled about actually I'm taking it from task to I'm taking it to under the surface, and I'm going to tell you how I'm feeling and the impact that this conversation is having on me, and then an invitation for them to go beneath the surface and have a different conversation. And I think that's one of the real ways we can do that is recognise how are we feeling and voicing that, and actually use that as an intervention and a bit of a shift. See that works. Yeah. It's one that obviously you use to great effect, and that I'm very fond of as well, because if I'm feeling it, then someone else in the room is probably feeling it, and there's a story behind that. And so how do we help them surface that? So brilliant example.
Beautiful examples of use of self.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
One last thing, George, if it's all right, and then we can start to bring this to a close, I think. But I've heard you both mention the word co-coach today, co-coach, and maybe that also goes back to the peculiarities of working emergently, not knowing what's going to happen, because all the moments that you're describing were not planned. They couldn't have been planned. They were not scripted. They were not on an agenda. There wasn't an agenda that says, well, at 10:15, there's going to be there needs to be a tumbleweed moment, and we need to sit in silence, and then at 11:30 we all need to get our energy up and get into conflict with each other to lay an egg. And so again, it's back to that discomfort. And so how does working with a co-coach, how has that helped you maybe, or what does that give you?
I can answer that, and then Seb, please do come in. I don't always co-coach, and a lot of it depends on budget. My absolute preference is to co-coach. It helps me hold a space where I feel supported and safer. It means that one of us can pay attention to process, one of us can pay attention to task, if that's how we're working. I think we also notice different things, and we can bounce off each other. Did you notice that? Is that a pattern, or is that a one-off? And I might notice something that my co-coach doesn't, and other way around. So and we'll quite often have that conversation in front of the team, actually, which can help the team realise what's going on too. So my preference would always be to co-coach for exactly that reason. I think you can hold the space better and quicker, potentially, and go deeper more effectively if the team are ready for it. And that's obviously the key thing, is, are they ready for it? And actually it's much more fun, let's be honest. You kind of don't feel in it on your own. Seb, I know you do quite a bit of co-coaching, don't you?
Yes, I mean, again, like, you have a very strong preference to work with a co-coach, and I think one of the things I recognised in myself is that it talks to the point that you made earlier, Emily, that one of the things that allows me the space to work emergently is to talk through a session plan with my co-coach. Now, the fact is, we won't refer to it other than what's the start and finish time, the session when we're with the team. But the process for me of talking through a structure is what allows me then to create enough safety for myself to hold the space for the team with my co-coach. So which I think is quite paradoxical sometimes when I explain people to this, but for me that's my minimum viable structure that I need. And I think the other thing about working with a co-coach that's really important for me is I know what my triggers are. And and I think contracting with my co-coach around those so that they can help me out if necessary is again just a really important way for me to allow me to work emergently.
Very nice. I'd like to just add something else in about working with a co-coach that I think is important to Emergence. So we've talked about it giving you more confidence and safety, about having a way of getting into the work together. I think when I'm working with a client over time, as you know, my approach is very Gestalt informed, and in Gestalt, field theory is so important. The field that the figures emerge from. What is the real need here? What is the real work? And I find it way easier to sense into that work, to see the system, to read the system when we're processing the system together. So those moments between sessions when we're sharing both what we've observed, what we're feeling, what's triggered in us, what's being said, and it's through that generative process that we really tap into. So where we start in the next session? Where's our focus? What might that call from us?
Yeah.
Or not? So the preparation between sessions is less for me about what are we going to do and what's the agenda or running order than what are we learning from the field? What's the data from the field? Yeah, thank you. That was really interesting to hear your stories today. Really helpful. Allard, was there something you was coming up for you that you wanted to say in closing?
No, I'm noticing that there's and I'm going to want to listen back to this, because I know there's a lot of things that were said, and I'm thinking people listening to this will go, oh God, I wish they had spoken more about this, that, or the other. If that's the case, by all means, let us know, because I think there's many threads in this conversation that would warrant a deeper dive, and we can always do that. And we'd love to have you back again, because so much to unpack. But I just wanted to say thank you, Emily. Thanks so much. It's great. It's great to see you in the context of this podcast, and same to you, Seb. And look forward to seeing you beyond the confines of this podcast again soon. Good luck with the book deal. Good luck with all the work.
Yeah.
And that's it for me, really. Just lots of thanks.
Yeah. Thank you very much both for being with us here today. Really enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you. It's been a real pleasure to be here, and not scary at all. Come on, it's you guys.
Thank you very much indeed. So much we could unpack, but brilliant to talk. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thanks for listening. See you next time. Thanks for joining today's journey of Teams Transformed.
If this sparked a new insight or a deeper question, we invite you to sit with it, not to solve it, but to let it unfold.
For resources, community, and reflection prompts, visit teamcoachingstudio.com.
Until the next time, stay present, stay curious, and keep leaning into the art of emergence.